What was your school's incident? Super weird story, but some random Facebook account popped up, threatening to shoot the school if this one girl didn't fess up for something she had done. No one knew who it was, and the girl allegedly had no idea what she was supposed to fess up about. The threats continued, and the Facebook account started posting some inappropriate videos and pictures that she had taken, censoring it but giving people an idea that he had intimate contact with the girl. The school ended up going on Christmas break like 3 days early, while the school district tried to figure out how to move forward. There was a town hall meeting that a parent brought a gun to, which created quite a stir. Feds kept looking into it, arrests were made, but each student was released on lack of evidence. The Facebook account progressed to basically taunting authorities that couldn't catch him. I think at the height of it, my wife and I were at Red Robin one night, and the account posted that it heard the girl was at the mall across the street and that a lot of people were about to be unalived. From Red Robin, we watched the authorities converge onto the mall. The girl wasn't there, and neither was a guy with weapons of any sort. The Facebook account ceased activity at a certain point after an admission that he was some guy in Minnesota or something that just picked a random school, girl, and town to F with. A few months ago, an arrest was finally made, and it was some dude in California, but man, it took forever for them to crack that case. Story 2. School trip in Russia in the early 90s. The maths teacher beat up a taxi driver. All the kids ran riot. They stayed in a hotel that had one of the floors sealed off, which turned out to be a knocking shop. One of the students fell in love with a hooker, went mad, and had to be drugged by a doctor to get him to the airport when they were leaving. Our school never did international trips again. Edit. I just woke up to see this comet took off. Thanks for the gold, strangers. Little more detail. We were from Ireland. Our maths teacher was a black belt in Taekwondo. Taxi driver tried to scam him and then pulled a knife on him. 2 senior students then joined in. Ages of students were from 14 to 18. It was a complete crap show of a trip. A few people don't believe this story, which is unfortunate, but it did happen, I'm afraid. O'Connell's CBS School, Dublin, Ireland, 1992 to 1993. Well, look at me. I fell in love with a Russian hooker, I did. Is that Scottish? Either way, the accent's bad. Story 3. When I was in primary school, for you not English, that's 3 to 11 years old, there was an older kid. I say older, but he was just 11. Anyway, he arranged a great escape. The school playground linked to the teacher's car park through a big field we weren't allowed on. From the car park, you could climb a gate to get out. So, on the day, a break time, the kids sounded a whistle. No joking, like a war horn, and about 300 children sprinted across this field to freedom. Some kids were just running for the heck of it, some following our noble leader, like me. Teachers sprinted out, grabbing us and forming lines to stop us. About a dozen of us got through and made it to the car park, but a few teachers were there having cigarettes, so they tried stopping us. I was caught meters from the gate and saw all but one child hop it, the older guy. He was chased by the history teacher but got back home and spent the rest of the day playing video games. He's in jail now. Story 4. Kid had a brain aneurysm in class. A classmate performed CPR on him until the paramedics arrived. Was brain dead for a week before the parents let him go. It was the incident that got our school defibrillators. Edit. Obviously, defibrillator wouldn't help a brain aneurysm. Most people only knew that he had stopped breathing and his heart had stopped. Edit 2. I am aware that defibrillators won't help a stopped heart either. This was an incident that sparked the district's awareness that they were ill-prepared for health crises like these. Even though a defibrillator is unhelpful in most cases for high school-aged children, most parents were satisfied to see the school taking some measures to prevent the death of more children. Story 5. Some of these stories are shocking and unreal. Meanwhile, the only interesting thing to ever happen in my old school is that once a dog got inside and it was running up and down the corridors and everyone was just petting it. I attended just a pretty small town school in rural Yorkshire, UK. Edit 1. This incident was primary school. I was in year 5, so it would have been like 2001 or 2002. I was 9 at the time. The dog breed, as far as I can remember, was some kind of miniature Shetland sheepdog. It looked basically like a miniature lassie dog. Edit 2. Also forgot at secondary school our head teacher ran over her laptop in her car. This happened when I was in year 8, so it would have been 2006? Apparently it was an accident, but we never did get the full story on that one. Okay, that guy's school might not sound pretty interesting, alright, but a lot of these are going to get pretty dark. Let's just appreciate the fact that there was a nice dog that was pet and somebody lost a laptop. Story 6. Not my school's, but it's like a town over. Last year, on an out of town football trip, 4 to 5 of their football players were drinking lean and vodka and had a bag of Funyuns. One of them decided it would be funny to A, eat them off of each other's chickens, and B, send a video of that to the vice principal. Needless to say, they got suspended, but Funyuns are now banned from the school for some other reason. Edit for fun. I'll add one of the great years of middle school. In the 7th grade, there was a student we'll call Joe. Now, Joe, on top of being annoying and never shutting the F up in class, had, digestive problems. He would routinely pass gas like a Gatling gun and would also run out of class screaming and holding his butt, presumably so he didn't crap his pants. Once, towards the middle of the year, he passed gas so awful it made our math teacher throw up. Then, a class or two later, he continued to pass gas like this, causing a classroom to be shut down for the entire freaking week. He promptly left school and we never talked about that again. Story 7. Someone called in a bomb threat, had to evacuate while cops patrolled the area on foot, helicopter, and bomb squad searched the school. Another time, someone broke into the school and tried to steal money from the cafeteria's registers. They were empty and he was frustrated, so he set fire to the cafeteria. These incidents were after I graduated. We were the epicenter of a swine flu outbreak in my city. School fired a teacher who was transitioning, made the news. Was also one of my favorite teachers. A priest/teacher essayed some students for 10 years. High school was interesting, to say the least. Story 8. Hard to choose between senior on his way to his old town to visit his old friends for his 18th birthday died of an overdose after doing speedballs and his friends just kept driving and didn't realize that he had passed. I don't even know what speedball is or was. Somebody made a fake MySpace account of one of the teachers, complete with crude photoshopping of her face onto various adult content scenes, then added most of the student body. Expelled. A guy accused a male teacher of SA. The teacher ended up unaliving himself over fear of losing his job. He had no family and loved his job and his students, so it was a pretty big blow for him. The accusation was never proven to be credible whatsoever. Edit to add. The teacher was never arrested or put on leave. The kid just spread the rumor. Another student, if I recall correctly, brought it up to the teacher that it was being said. The teacher left work that day and unalived himself. School did a full investigation and nothing turned up. My brother was in the same class as the student and teacher, so I'm mostly going off what the kids in that class were saying. There was a physical improbability due to the lack of locks on the doors. Kid said he was locked in. Not to mention the teacher had taught for like 20 years or so and never had anyone ever say anything negative about him before or after. Was hugely beloved in the community, and the kid was a known troublemaker and all around that type of kid. Not saying it didn't happen, and I never like to discredit SA or SA victims. I'm just going off of what was the general consensus of people closer to the situation. It's sad either way. Story 9. My freshman year, pretty early in the year, after being homeschooled in 8th grade, some kid hacked the school website and put on the calendar there was going to be a bombing. Then it went all over Snapchat not to come to school that day. Anyways, I was forced to go because our school has a system where if you miss 4 or less days, you can exempt 3 exams if you have at least all Bs, and I had missed 4 already. I guess my life is valued less than taking exams. My parents were assured nothing would happen. I came to school that day and saw about 20 cops on campus around the school. There was about 1/5 of the school there, and even some teachers weren't showing up. There was one girl in first period who said she was going to go to the bathroom, and when she came back, we looked at her like she was an effing god. Anyways, nothing happened, but the kid got caught. Kinda anticlimactic, but my school is kinda boring. Story 10. Several. Kid who was notoriously violent, aggressive, and quick to anger repeatedly slammed a girl's head into the back of a chair in choir after she asked him to pick up a water bottle he had tossed on the floor. No one effed with this kid. He was a short, pudgy redhead who looked completely unassuming, but anyone who knew better knew of his explosive temper and his tendency to instantly resort to violence. And I heard through the grapevine that there was an official rule that he was not to be seated near known homophobic, he was openly gay, students or anyone else who likely was to antagonize him, as it was a question of when violence would erupt, not if. Dude was nice enough to me, but I gave him a wide berth, and that incident got him shipped off to a psych ward for the rest of his high school days. Some dude had some very personal secrets spread by someone who he thought was a friend. He confronted his friend, things escalated, and the former friend got his head slammed through a glass door that was reinforced with metal wires. Long story short, there was so much blood that they had to shut down an entire hall for weeks. This was slightly before my time, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's still part of school lore. This wasn't a huge incident, but it was widely known in my graduating class. One of the kids on the lacrosse team was upset about an extremely narrow loss that was apparently due to a very contentious call by the referee. And when the team stopped at a Quiznos for a post-game meal, he smashed virtually everything in the men's room that he could and caused fairly substantial damage. The school got billed for the damage, and while they couldn't officially pin it on him, everyone knew because he wouldn't stop bragging about it, which is also incidentally a pretty good summary of his character. Story 11. Not my high school, but the town over. A kid on the football team claimed to have been hazed by getting assaulted by a broomstick on No Gay Thursday, where anything that would normally be perceived as gay was not so. It made news all over the place. Coaches were fired, there was a huge investigation, and everything. Eventually, they found out the kid made it all up just to spite some of the people he accused. Oh yeah, also in my high school, one of the teachers was arrested for being a predator, and our superintendent resigned after it was found out that he was cheating on his wife with another member of the school board. And one of our former baseball players called Monet Davis a racial slur on Twitter. That got some news coverage too. Story 12. I went to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. In the 60s, it got an honorable mention in Playboy as a party school. In 1998, there was a full-scale riot on Halloween, with businesses set on fire and cars flipped over. When I was in there from 2003 to 2007, I worked as a front desk assistant at one of the dorms. The night the White Sox won the World Series, I was working and saw one of our RAs slide across the lobby in his socks and run outside. I don't care about sports and had no idea what was happening. The next thing I knew, my boss's boss was telling me to shut the building down and only allow actual residents in. As the night unfolded, I got reports that there was an impromptu parade of people making their way around campus, knocking over lampposts, setting trash cans on fire, and eventually trying to take down the goalpost on the football field. I will never understand the mental jump from, "Yay, my team won," to, "Let's set crap on fire." Guy clearly hasn't been to Philadelphia or Vancouver. Win or lose, those fans go hard for their teams. Story 13. I remember my class getting into a frenzy about the amount of cops outside. The school was fully surrounded. Lots of wild speculation until another teacher came and whispered something to our teacher, who then ordered us into the corner where we wouldn't be visible from the door. After about 10 minutes, some guys came in and escorted us down the stairs and two outside. Luckily, his target, the vice principal, wasn't in that day. I knew him from Boy Scouts as well as school, was one of the scout leader's kids even. After he got out of juvie, I ended up at one of his parties, and he ended up shooting at a car that he felt had driven by too many times. Eventually, everyone left instantly. No clue or care where he is now. Oh, small tidbit. There's been rumors since Friday, said a 13-year-old student who did not want his name used, was from my neighborhood where the guy had planned the whole thing. I didn't know about it, but apparently the rest of my neighborhood did. No one believed he'd actually go through with it though. My idiot neighbor told the news all of that, and was lucky enough that the reporter changed his quote to not indicate him. Story 14. Two interconnected incidents. I'm old, so I was in high school at the time that Hong Kong transferred back to China. If you had come to my high school 3 or 4 years before the transfer, you would have seen a maybe 5% Chinese student population. But it jumped suddenly, like up to about 50% in my junior year, and stayed that way. We had all these Chinese students, all from Hong Kong, suddenly transferred to my high school in a suburb of Toronto. Nowhere near Chinatown, by the way. I'd say about half of those kids were there without their parents, living with other families. Their parents were expected to come later, probably after the transfer back to China had been completed. For some reason that I never fully understood, it was a known thing that these kids usually had cash on them, like a lot of cash. I never really checked personally, but we used to talk about how they would have at least $1,000 in their wallets every day. Anyway, the first incident was that a kid from another school came into our school one day and found the first Chinese student he saw and beat him with a pipe and stole his wallet. The reason I think of this as the incident is that it was the reason our school suddenly started locking the doors, and you had to get in before a certain time, otherwise you couldn't get into the school without buzzing in and the office knowing you were late. And we had security guards walking around all of a sudden. Totally changed the atmosphere of the school. The second incident happened the year after I graduated from high school. I was back home for vacation, and all our little suburbia was talking about was the principal of my high school being investigated for exploitation. Apparently, she had been taking regular trips to Hong Kong and somehow convincing parents there to pay her insane amounts of money, and she would make sure their kids got into her school, which is such bullcrap. I mean, I am assuming it works this way everywhere in Canada, but you just have to live in the neighborhood of a school and be of school age to get into a school. No one should be paying to go to a public school beyond any regular taxes anyway. I'm honestly not entirely sure what kind of lies she told these poor people, and I'm not sure if it had anything to do with why their kids were there without their parents and why they had so much cash on them all the time. But regardless, she exploited a whole bunch of people, and in doing so changed the makeup of not only our school, but our entire suburb. Story 15. In the 7th grade, I vividly remember walking into school one morning while a bunch of kids were leaving the building with tears in their eyes. It was the second week of school, and when I walked into the hallways, everyone was crying, students and teachers. I walked up to the first person I saw and asked what happened, and they said, "Julio died." I had just met Julio for the first time the week before, on the lunch line. I frantically searched for friends of mine to find out what happened to Julio and finally met up with someone who had the story. Julio and a few new high school friends had met up after school to hang out. They were playing around at an old junkyard where there was a rope swing. Julio had pretended to put the rope around his neck, joking around like a 12-year-old boy. He slipped and accidentally unalived himself. One of his friends had tried to cut the rope with their teeth. Those 7th graders who had just become friends watched him perish. The whole school was in shock given the details and how tragic the whole thing was. I didn't go to class that day. I just sat in the library with my friends and other classmates who couldn't fathom what had happened. I can still picture what Julio looked like, and I only knew him for a week. He was a good kid. Story 17. I have two. In middle school, someone wanted to burn the place down. They started a fire in the men's bathroom in the sink, a porcelain sink in a tile-enclosed bathroom. I was walking back to the counselor meeting and saw the smoke. Told my teacher, we evacuated, and he confessed in about 15 minutes. Second one involves getting finals canceled my junior year. They were cleaning out every old mercury thermometer from the school, and someone dropped a box. Code red issued, full lockdown, hazmats come in. Takes them 2 days to sanitize the area. Those were supposed to be the first 2 days of the 4-day-long finals. They told us anyone who wants to take a final is more than welcome. Otherwise, they are 100% optional. That was a start to a great summer. Story 18. I've told the story on Reddit before, but it's always fascinating to people. I went to a small private Christian school. Because it was a Christian school, we had to go to the chapel and sing songs and be preached at once a week. Chapel was run by a group of students called the Chapel Leadership Group. Well, they had a lot of special privileges at the school that many of them abused. We had to wear uniforms, itchy polo shirts, but Chapel Leadership Group had special Chapel Leadership t-shirts that they were only supposed to wear on Chapel Day. But they would wear them for most of the week and never got coded. They didn't have to take Bible class like the rest of us and would brag about how they just sat in the chapel unsupervised by any adults. So they would just sleep all class period and get a free A, and various other things, but those are the ones I remember the most. So my friends decided that to rebel against the group, they would nickname themselves after the 7 sins: gluttony, wrath, sloth, envy, lust, greed, and pride. I thought it was hilarious, but didn't really participate. A few weeks later, I got called to the principal's office. At the time, I was doing tutoring in my free period, so I thought maybe the principal wanted to talk about the students I was tutoring. I was wrong. I go into her office, and she shuts the door behind me, sits down at her desk, and gives me the super serious stare. "Did your friends sacrifice a goat to the devil in the attic over the church?" Insert comedic record scratch sound here. My first thought was that she was joking. Because, seriously, what? But she was completely and utterly serious. She really thought this happened. I told her no, that they wouldn't know where to get a goat in the first place, let alone be capable of dragging it through the school and through the locked door and up the super narrow stairwell to the attic. Plus, wouldn't there be some sort of evidence of a sacrifice happening, blood or something, whatever? She wasn't satisfied with my response and proceeded to question every one of the people in the 7 deadly sins group. She never had any evidence that anything ever happened. She was just going off of a rumor. And of course, none of them had done such a thing, so nothing ever came of it except for us getting a great story about that time our high school principal accused us of sacrificing a goat in the attic of the school. The same principal also told my class that we would all be mauled by bears if we weren't more respectful, because that happened in the Bible. It was interesting. Story 19. My school's incident just happened a week ago. We were having a fire drill, and it seemed pretty normal. It was the beginning of the day, so everyone was still pretty tired and just making their way outside. I was on the second floor, and I had just reached the staircase when I saw people turning around. I was like, okay, whatever, they're just skipping. And then there was a much larger group of people turning around, screaming something about guns and fights and blood. I got scared, so I turned around. We were kept in our classrooms for a while and went straight into a lockdown. No one was telling us what was going on. But out of my classroom's window, we saw police, ambulances, everything. Moments later, the news started swarming the school and a couple helicopters flew by. It was around then when my teacher finally got an email about what had happened. A student had unalived himself on campus. The rest of that day was surreal. It was a huge blur, and I didn't even know the person. Some of us were scared because he was able to bring a gun to school. Some of us were scared because of the domino effect nearly all high school self-unalivings bring. Some of us weren't scared at all. A few of my friends were the first people to see the guy unalive himself, and they immediately started ushering people back inside. They were never the same after that. The rest of that week, we didn't have to come to school. School was still in session, but those absences didn't count against you. Then it was Thanksgiving week, and tomorrow is our first day back. So yeah, that's what happened at my school. Really scary, still shaken up about it. The worst part was when the news vans were swarming around the areas of school and we had to walk past to go home. Every single reporter was trying to talk to these students. I get that it's their job, but it's sick to talk to teenagers so soon after a traumatizing event like that. Oh man, that is so sad and so messed up. Like that whole thing where the reporters are trying to talk to the students. I don't know how all of that works, and I get it's like a unique kind of situation, but there needs to be some sort of buffer that these kids just witness maybe one of the most traumatizing things they'll ever see. And the people are like, hey, by the way, what'd you think about that, son? I don't have a solution, but, there should be a solution. And that's all I can say. Story 20. Freshman year 1 of the IPC teachers had been fired for an inappropriate relationship with a student. This guy had been fired a district over in the next city for the same thing the previous school year. Same year, we lost one of the varsity girls' basketball coaches for having relations with a student on the team. It later came out he and his wife were known swingers, and she'd also participated in some acts with the same student. That last bit was hearsay from around school. A substitute teacher was also dismissed from the district after an upset girlfriend found out the sub was screwing her boyfriend, another well-known student. He was 18, but still illegal. Old girls stormed into the class while sub was having a lecture, and all heck broke loose, which of course is how admin found out. Our star quarterback was on his way to practice when a chick from the goth group walked right out in front of his car as a bus was loading kids on the other side of the street. He thought he killed her, but she actually committed self-unaliving. Another coach from the boys' varsity basketball team was also fired for SAing a student who was a manager for the team. She was in my class, and he wasn't charged until the following year after we graduated. French teacher and student didn't start off great at the beginning of the year. He went into the class one day and wrote all kinds of colorful words on the walls in black paint marker. The same year, he convinced another kid to steal her keys out of her purse one day when she left to use the bathroom. Drove her car around the parking lot a few times before crashing it. Story 21. On mobile, excuse my formatting and typos. Long story short, in 9th grade, a classmate committed self-unaliving. I lived in an extremely small religious town. I was the new girl in 8th grade coming from a neighboring town. Needless to say, I didn't have the right last name. The classmate's best friend contacted me through MSN Messenger that night, telling me that the classmate emailed his self-unaliving note to him and that he had forwarded it to me because he didn't know what to do with it. From what I remember, it willed gaming consoles and the like to the best friend and had a paragraph about how he loved his family. We talked a little while about how he couldn't believe what happened. I told him that his family should know if there was a self-unaliving letter. He asked me not to say anything. My class spent the first day back at school the following Monday. In the health and home ec classroom, my high school was made up of 80 students, about 24 kids in my grade. The home ec teacher was well known in the small community and was close to most families in the area. She was also related to the student who committed self-unaliving. Because of this, I felt like she was a trustworthy adult. Her 20-something-year-old daughter was also in the classroom for support. I pulled her aside and I confided in her what had been sent to me. I asked her what I should do. Her and her daughter asked to see it. I pulled it up on her computer and stepped back. Without saying a word to me, they hit print, 30 copies, and handed it to the entire class and the principal. Their reasoning was that everyone deserved to read it and I shouldn't keep it to myself. When the state police were called to the school to talk to me, the home ec teacher and her daughter changed their story and told them that I had brought the copies to school and passed them out. The family called me that night. Again, the teacher is a cousin and they heard her version and took a lot of their pain out on me despite me trying to explain what happened. Later that week, they held the funeral in our gymnasium and required our class to walk up and light a candle and hug the family. The entire town was there. You could hear a pin drop until it was my turn to light a candle. Then the whispering started from the townspeople and the bleachers and classmates on the gym floor. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. I find out a week later that the best friend faked the letter. When he finally admitted it, no one cared. He was from a prominent local family. There were no consequences, and it was never clarified with my school or classmates. This hung over my head for the rest of high school. It was the talk of the town and the school, and the teacher didn't ever come clean on what happened. I had her for a teacher until I graduated. I'm 30 now, and I still feel like I can't mourn his death with the rest of my classmates. It absolutely haunts me to think about that high school. Story 22. When I was a sophomore at an all-girls boarding school, someone had stolen my package from the school post office in a string of package thefts over the course of a week or so. My package was knitting supplies for a class that I needed to finish for my final project. One day, I saw this notoriously weird girl knitting in the hallway. At first, I actually thought it was cool she picked up knitting, but I realized they were the same needles and yarn that I had ordered. I went to her room and knocked on the door. The doors had fogged windows and old-school latches without locks, and it was typical to tap the latch and lean your head into each other's rooms. As I looked in, I saw another project with the other yarn I ordered. I came back later and she was there. I simply said, "Hey, look, I know you took my package. I really need it for class, so if you give it back, I won't tell anyone you took it." She burst into tears and asked, how dare I accuse her and that some friend sent her those knitting supplies? So I said I'd have to report her and left. During study hall that night, one of the dorm parents came to my room. She told me I was in trouble for accusing the girl of stealing, that I should be ashamed and apologize. I told her I was sure she had been responsible for stealing all the packages. I put together all my order info with photos and told them I saw her with all of it. The next day, we were called to an all-school emergency assembly. The school dean announced that right then, while everyone was accounted for, they were doing random room searches. They searched her room first and found everything. I mean every single thing that people were missing for the 2 years that she was there. She was hauled off to a locked room in the health center and sent away. The faculty had to pack her things and try to recover stolen items. By then, most of it had gotten thrown out. She had a collection of dildos, stolen, I don't know. One of the most remarkable finds was the credit card of another girl's dad that she had lifted from his wallet over Parents' Weekend. She even stole my Reuben sandwich from the hall fridge one time, which still upsets me more than I care to admit. She had a lot of compulsive disorders, apparently. Her roommate mysteriously left the school over Thanksgiving break, and no one ever heard from her again. I'm pretty sure we know why. Story 23. I'll give 2 stories. I went to the University of Western Ontario, which is a notorious party school. One of the residences, Saugeen Maitland Hall, aka the Zoo, is well known for being the wildest residence on campus. This is relevant to both stories. First one was in my freshman year of undergrad during Frosh Week. Every evening, the various residences had a night out at a local establishment. So one evening, Saugeen students went to this one hall, not a bar, at the other end of the city. It was their Zoo Bucks night, where students would accumulate a form of currency which they could then trade in for Saugeen items, shirts, sweaters, and the like. Seems harmless enough, right? I'm a little hazy on the details here since I wasn't there, but apparently at this event, everyone was given Zoo Bucks, and you could trade them with other students there. Students with the most Zoo Bucks at the end of the night won a prize. I'm sure where you can see this is headed. One female student decided to start trading sexual favors for zoo bucks and got busted in the bathroom giving out relations. The prize was a CD player. Yep, she sold herself for a CD player. Second story happened 8 or 9 years later when I was back for my master's. I heard rumors of this a couple of weeks before it hit the papers, but the story was that a bunch of guys paid one of their floor mates to strip for them. Now this was pre-Facebook, but there were photos and they were circulated. Slowly and surely it went around campus, pictures and all, and it eventually hit the news. Google Sajin stripper and you can read all about it. Apparently the girl in question ended up leaving the school since the photos clearly identified her. So yeah, hookers and student strippers. Story 24. Had a couple. Freshman year, girl self-unalived herself while parents went away on vacation. Was dangling outside her window for 2 days until they got back. Didn't know her that well personally as she was 2 grades ahead of me. Sophomore year, kid I hung out with sold some fake pot to one of the less popular kids. Kid got upset and told the truancy officer that the kid was selling pot. Arrested immediately on school property. And this was 1997 when a marijuana charge was a big deal. Junior year, there was a gang fight in front of our school. My school wasn't huge, graduating class of 205 people. Somehow, gangs popped up in our school. We had an abnormally large Vietnamese and Cambodian population, especially for the area I live in. Apparently, they don't like each other, and one day they just met in front of the school and went at it. One heck of a fight, too. Senior year, my girlfriend's brother decided to skip school. It was around the second month of his freshman year. He hung out downtown, then around lunchtime he had to go back across town to get home. You didn't want to get seen, so you duck into the woods and generally go behind everything. This involves crossing the railroad tracks. I'm not 100% sure of the details. Only one witness, and he never spoke of it, and later in life unalived himself. But he didn't hear the train and was killed immediately. Completely destroyed his sister, my girlfriend. The relationship never had a chance. Story 25. My senior year, a bunch of kids, all grades, planned to go down to the creek, which was right on school property, and watch 3 different fights occur. They were amazing fights. Kid got his crap beat, teeth kicked in and bloodied, and would tell the other kid that he was a loser while laying into him. The loser in that fight crawled up the hill to be met by his mother. I heard her ask what happened to him, and he said sheepishly that he got in a fight. Had that not happened, there wouldn't have been a round of like 15 suspensions for the fighters and supporters, who were all identified on by some idiot who took video. Another kid who we all thought would shoot the school up but seemed to have no muscle mass beat the crap out of one of the thug types who worked out. Crazy kid suplexes his butt and dang near broke his neck doing it. Nobody picked on him after that, and he did not shoot up the school. But he did take close-up photos of people to keep for himself. Jeez, you got UFC 306 going down by the creek. Story 36. The summer before my freshman year of high school, a couple of rising seniors decided to get drunk and take a speedboat out on the river that ran through town. One of them fell out, and his buddy, drunk to the point he was probably seeing triple, ran him over trying to get close enough to drag him back in the boat. Took the cops and even a Coast Guard patrol over 5 hours to find his body washed up on shore, not far from my house. After the year started, a bunch of people were super depressed that one of their friends was dead and another was going to jail for multiple crimes. Ended up throwing a memorial party for the dead guy and someone brought alcohol. One of the attendees, a popular guy in my workshop class, wrapped his car around a telephone pole on his way home. You'd think that people would learn from losing 2 of their friends to drunk driving accidents. Story 27. Middle school. A 9th or 10th grader who was involved with some bad folks refused to wash his locker after Christmas. The teacher got a little frustrated. The kid threatened the teacher. The principal was called. This guy was awesome. Biker guy with beard and tattoos, gentle as all heck. The talk went like this. I didn't hear it myself, but some 8th graders were eavesdropping and the parents talked about it. Principal, open the locker. Kid, no, it's my locker. I own it. Principal, this is my school. This is my gosh dang locker. Now open it. Kid, F you. Principal, he proceeds to punch through his crappy plywood locker door. 4.5 pounds of marijuana falls out of his locker. Story 28. First of all, a week before I started, there was a dead body found in one of the school's dumpsters. After that was a kid who got his skull caved in by an older student with a rounder's bat. I saw parts of the incident, but not the kid getting hit. That made the local news, TV interview, and everything. Particularly as it was a white boy who hit an Asian, Middle Eastern kid who survived with a concussion. My area was very notorious for some racial tensions. I actually chanced upon the white lad like a decade later. Not recognizing him, we got to talking as I was carrying archery gear entering the club. Don't know how he came around to school days, but he says, "Remember that guy who hit an Asian with a rounder's bat? That was me." Seemed pretty proud of that notoriety. Dining on that so long after pretty well illustrates how he progressed in life. After that, there was a lad that got burned alive messing with petrol, allegedly sniffing it. He spilled some on a girl he was with by accident, so the girl poured some on him back. She then tried pranking him by flashing a lighter near him and, well, I was pretty well acquainted with him and his sister who was in my year and used to ride the same bus. They were both kinda rough tearaway types. We have a word for that here in the UK, but I won't use it. She beat up another girl who was spreading rumors about the incident. It happened on a school night, so the next day was an experience to say the least. There was a memorial bench made for him. To be honest, he was a little crap. Like, seriously, antisocial, but a funny little crap. Personally, gave me no reason not to like him. Didn't mean this to be so long, forgot how twisted our school was. Besides the usual fights, pregnancies, robberies, and kids being shut in rooms with live fireworks were the biggest, shall we say? Story 29. My school was pretty dull. No bomb threats or anything. But my freshman year, some kid wore a pro-gay marriage shirt to school and the principal tried to claim it was dress code violation even though he never batted an eyelash at kids wearing anti-abortion shirts. It was 110% political. Someone showed me his Facebook page a few years ago, and it was exactly the sort of nutso-Christian spew you'd expect from somebody like this, along with zero grasp of privacy settings because it was all public. Escalated to the point where the ACLU got involved and a lawsuit was threatened before the principal caved. It was a huge deal because the school hadn't even been open a full year. The principal got promoted and doesn't have any contact with students anymore. Story 30. All time or when I went there? I'll answer both. All time, I went to the middle school where the Brenda Spencer shooting happened. Back when my school was an elementary school, a high school student named Brenda Spencer got a rifle and shot across the street at the school, injuring 9 and killing 2. The janitor and the principal. The police or the news was able to call her in the middle of the shooting and they asked, "Why are you doing this?" And she responded, "I don't like Mondays." There was a song made with that name about the shooting. When I went to the school though, there was a pretty weird moment. In 6th grade, the lockdown bell started going off. Over the intercom, the dean of academics assured us it's just a drill and that we would be done soon. Except then an hour passed, and then 2. Then we were led up to the upper field. Then we learned it was not a drill, but the teacher still didn't tell us. Nope, we learned from a kid. He was in the PE locker room, and when the PE teacher, who knew it wasn't a drill, said, "Don't look out the windows," the kid made a beeline for the window. He then turned around and yelled, "Bomb dogs!" He then told everyone this at the field. Apparently, there was a massive bomb threat issued to like 10 schools across the district. The entire time I was at that school, the teachers did not acknowledge that it was real even one time. Story 31. A kid in my class died of meningitis. I didn't know he was in my class until I saw his face. RIP. Teacher everyone thought was cool but weird used to work at our school and was moved because of an incident. He was finally caught and registered as a child offender. Another teacher at my high school was rumored to be with a gay student. The teacher switched schools, don't know if anything came about after. A girl went into a coma after ODing on a variety of drugs and alcohol. They are about to pull the plug after a year, unsure if they did it already. RIP. Security guard caught by parents having relations with an, although 18-year-old student, was still fired for obvious reasons. One of my teachers was on the news for not being allowed to see Obama because he was a conservative and greatly disliked Obama. It was the school that barred him, not Secret Service. He died earlier this year. RIP. Teacher at high school got cancer, then traveled the world living with previous students and wrote a book about his experience. His book was set to become a movie starring Steve Carell. RIP. This is everything that I know of. Admittedly, saying rest in peace as RIP and keeping a straight face is not an easy thing to do. Story 32. This happened between two people before I moved there, but I ended up being friends with both of them, so I think the story is legit. Friend A likes girl. Friend B also likes girl. Girl asks friend B to a dance or something, upsets friend A. Friend A says he's going to beat the crap out of friend B as a result. Attention-seeking spastic boy overhears this, tells principal friend A is going to sit on the roof of the school on the night of the dance and shoot anyone he can. Dance is canceled, police are called, manhunt ensues to find the alleged soon-to-be mass murderer. They find him a few hours away, staying at his aunt's that weekend. He's asleep after having played vidya all night. He gets arrested and investigated. They don't have any evidence other than what the attention-seeking spastic boy said, though. Doesn't matter. School expels him, district bans him. His family is hit with a $15,000 fine and demands a public apology from his parents. They can't afford the fine, and they're like, F it. They're going to give an apology to the school for some crap because a spaz made it up. Some point not long after this, friend A and friend B make up. Friend A hasn't had a very smooth life since then, last I heard. Story 33. I started to reply to another comment in here, but then realized that I was typing up a storm, so here it goes. Someone mentioned the poop bandit. We had the phantom crapper. The auditorium was on the first floor, and it shared a wall with a hallway on the second floor. As such, there were no classrooms on an entire side of that hallway and only 2 functional classrooms on the other side. Basically, if you wanted to do something sketchy and probably get away with it, you could do it there. In this case, that meant a string of incidents where someone just straight up dropped a deuce in the middle of the floor. In the 4 years I went to that school, this happened at least 15 times. The strange thing is, this had been going on consistently for almost a decade. The school tried to figure it out. They had hall monitors placed strategically in the area. They even switched around the lunch schedule to minimize the amount of time that one could be in that hallway alone. But still, crap. An acquaintance told me years later that he was once approached by someone who he swore never to name and asked to be the phantom crapper, but he didn't feel like he could handle the responsibility. Story 34. There was this girl who took it upon herself to self-pleasure with a hot dog at lunch. Well, the issue with being a dumb teenager doing something stupid is that you don't think about the consequences of your actions. So she's having a grand time, I'm sure, when in her excitement she does a problematic thrust that results in a hot dog being stuck. She ends up having to go to the hospital to get it removed. This is where the incident starts. The whole senior class finds out and starts making fun of this girl for it relentlessly to the point the mom threatened to sue the school. So our principal decides to confront this before anyone else starts making fun of her. So he summons each class separately to discuss the effects of bullying. So I'm a freshman and have absolutely no idea what this guy is talking about, and neither do any of my classmates. But I did have a brother who was a senior, so I asked and he told me, and I told my friends and they told their friends. Essentially, my principal proved the Streisand effect. Story 45. Finally, my time to shine. I'm probably way too late to this thread, but this was a huge deal at my high school and still is. I went to high school in Michigan, and in Michigan, the winters get rough. During my senior year, towards the beginning of winter, we'd get ice days off school, and when it would rain and freeze the roads. Unfortunately, we had a couple days worthy of an ice day, but for some reason we still had school. After multiple almost ice days, we got a day off, but not because of an ice day. Some kids decided to take getting a day off school into their own hands and slashed all the bus's tires. Everyone is excited we get the day off and no one knows who did it. For months it was a mystery who had slashed these tires. The cops came to school and interviewed some suspects, but nothing came of it. A couple months later, a couple buddies and I were sitting in class talking about how we wish someone would F up the buses again. Then this guy, let's call him Derek, gets our attention and asks us if we wanted him to do it again. Right there, we immediately questioned if he was actually the bus guy, but after he explained all the hoops he jumped through to create an alibi, we were sold. We were friends with Derek, but not like hang outside of school friends. Derek was a real quiet guy. He slept through most classes and all he did outside of class was work out. We told Derek we'd each give him $5 to slash the tires again, and he agreed. The next day we didn't have school. The bus tires got slashed again. Derek effing came through again. This effing hero decided on multiple occasions to give everyone a day off of school. The next day back at school, the video surveillance of the bus yard was being shown on all the TVs. The police desperately wanted to know who did it, and the video was too blurry to see any faces. All you could see was Derek and his two accomplices, but only my friends and I knew who they were. The cops came and took Derek out of class and interviewed him. A half hour later, Derek returned to class with the biggest crap-eating grin. He confidently told us they had nothing on him, and you know what? They effing didn't. Derek completely got away with it. The rest of the year, everyone in school was curious who slashed the tires, and it became sort of an urban legend. A couple years later, my sister went to the school and I would hear them talk about how maybe they'd have the day off if the bus slashers showed up that night. Even now, almost a decade later, my little cousin who goes to the school now talks about how people tell him about the bus slashers and how they would slash the tires at any time. It's probably the biggest secret I've ever been a part of. It felt amazing knowing who slashed the tires when the entire school and community was at a complete loss. Also, none of us ever actually gave him the money. He should have asked for it up front. Story 36. This may be a bit over the top, but I feel the need to tell this story again. I say again because I told it some time ago on a different throwaway account, but the account name was random letters and numbers, and I don't think I'll ever be able to track it down. Anyway, in middle school I kind of knew this kid. Not very well, but he wasn't a bad guy as I recall. We'll call him Pat. I took pity on Pat because he was a bit strange and he didn't have many friends. I guess we were quasi-friends. Anyway, I want to say the year was 1998 or 1999. There's a curious piece of news making its way around at the school. The word was Pat had a bit of a mishap in the bathroom. I didn't see it for myself, but I guess enough people saw. As I recall, the story was that Pat had pooped on the mat of the bathroom floor before sitting down on the toilet. As a result, Pat gained an unfavorable moniker, crap spreader. He was teased mercilessly because of that. I remember that. He would be referred to as the crap spreader more than half the time. When high school rolled around, Pat was nowhere in sight. I surmised that he either went to a different school or unalived himself. Okay, took a bit of a turn there. Felt like there was lots of rhyming and alliteration, and you know what, Pat? Wherever you are, I hope you're doing very, very well. Story 37. When I was in college, the thing to do at parties was take a piece of furniture, like a couch or mattress, and light it on fire on the front lawn. Kind of stupid, but pretty much harmless until a bush lit on fire. The fire department showed up, and what did the college kids do? Throw beer bottles at the firefighters. Police showed up, and what did the college kids do? Light the effing cop cars on fire. Full effing right. News showed up, and what did the college kids do? Light the effing news cars on fire. Flip cars on the street. It was insane. It was St. Patrick's Day, and this was around the time when G20 protests were going on. So I think that's what it was all about. When my roommate told me the real reason they were rioting, which there really wasn't one, I decided not to go and watch from my apartment, which was one street over. Good thing, because the cops had these cameras that went 20 to 30 feet in the air, took pictures of people going into the school, and matched the faces to the videos on the internet. Lots of people were charged and expelled. This was Fanshawe College in London, Ontario, Canada. Happened about 5 years back. Story 38. Head of our school's Christian club and voted most kind by the school. Actually a nice person, at least I thought at the time, hit and ran 3 children, killing 2, literally right across the street from our school. She parked her car, went to class, and then was arrested, if I remember correctly, in second period. She claimed she thought she just ran over the curb. She did run over the curb and over 3 children, and it was later found that she had blood on the windshield and all over the hood of her car. She also claimed that she was late for class and just trying to make it to school on time. Her father was a rich lawyer and her car was a BMW 3 Series she got for her 16th birthday. She pled not guilty, and the trial went on for months in the town paper. I think she got 10 years. Story 39. My junior year of high school, we got a new principal. Most people generally liked this new guy. The others didn't really care. The new principal liked to throw around the fact that he had a PhD, so insisted we call him Dr. April. This is all fine and dandy until someone my senior year there is an investigation on whether this guy's PhD was real. The investigation stemmed from another incident with the principal calling himself the Black Bull at teacher meetings after school, making other teachers feel uncomfortable. The investigation on his PhD was led by a group of teachers. They found out he had bought his PhD from a fake university. The investigation was completed and the results were released around the time of graduation. Everyone at the school stopped using the title Dr. April and switched to calling him Mr. April. At the graduation ceremony, he referred to himself as Dr. April. When everyone went to shake his hand and take their diploma, everyone called him by the correct title, Mr. April. On my class's diploma, it is signed with the title Dr. April. The next year, Dr. April was no longer the principal at the high school. Story 40. Oh boy, several. 1. There was that time someone, I never found out who, paintballed the back of the gym. I came out the morning of PE to see paintball shells all over the place and the school's acronym covered in orange paint. Was cleaned up by the next morning. 2. Someone from my school got kicked out of a basketball game for throwing green index cards onto the court. This was intended as a racist sentiment, as the majority of the other team was Hispanic. Principal was there and booted that kid real fast, and he got suspended from school. Kid happened to be wearing a bandana with an American flag motif, and so he claimed that the principal kicked him out for the bandana. The following Monday at school, like half of the entire student body is wearing something with an American flag on it. Someone ran past my homeroom screaming, USA, USA, with a flag, which is when I found out about it. I had no clue what was happening until I asked my homeroom teacher, and she told me what actually happened. Died down by Friday when everyone found out it was a hoax, and no one spoke of it again. 3. The vice principal got arrested for SA 2 weeks before I graduated. His name and picture were still in the programs they passed out to families attending graduation, which I assume were printed before he was arrested. Story 41. 2 incidents come to mind. The first was when a final year student, in the run-up to the final exams, snapped after being yelled at too many times by the whiny old math teacher. He stormed out of her class and left school premises only to come back just after the end of the school day armed with a baseball bat. Luckily for the math teacher, the vice principal happened to glance up from his desk just as the student walked past, figured out what was going on and was able to race out the back way and trap the guy in a courtyard by locking the gates around him. The cops were called, but I don't know what happened to the guy. The second incident was much more fun. The school was centered around a courtyard called the Quadrangle, which had second-floor walkways around it. Some kid decided to smash open a fire closet on the walkways and use the hose within to blast the crap out of everyone in the Quadrangle. It was truly glorious to behold. The teachers made several efforts to take him down, but he just held them off with the hose riot squad style until someone wised up and cut the water supply to the school. He was dragged away by a group of sopping wet teachers and never seen again. Story 42. My high school made national news when our student section brought a Trump flag to a football game. Our school is predominantly white and the school we were playing against is predominantly black. Our student section dressed up for different games like a blackout, a whiteout, the pinkout, etc. And for this game, we decided to do USA because it was Friday around the time of 9/11. So some kids brought a Donald Trump flag as well as a Betsy Ross flag, and people supporting the other school came to the conclusion that we were trying to be racist. They even thought we were racist for chanting, "Go green, go white," but we do that at every game. But all we were supporting was our country. It was a stupid decision to bring politics into a high school football game, but we didn't deserve as much criticism as we received. Story 43. I went to a very prestigious private school in the Northwest Ohio area. It was K through 12 with only 500 students in total. My English teacher had worked there for 30 years and had a daughter 2 grades below me. He was extremely well liked by all faculty and students. Long story short, we became close friends over the school year, only for him to literally groom me into harassment. He ended up texting me graphic fantasies of the two of us that he was pleasuring himself to. A few days later, a friend came across the messages on my phone and helped me report him to the school guidance counselor. He lost his job immediately, but many students never treated me the same and would give me dirty looks. I was a minor at the time, but he never received any legal ramifications because of what he technically didn't do, and it wasn't illegal. Story 44. My school was very eventful. We had a huge anti-Semitic issue at my school last year. A group of girls had a sleepover and drew swastikas and hate speech on each other, and another group of girls had an Instagram account where they bullied a girl for being fat and Jewish. Our principal brought in the ADL to have a 2-day-long seminar with all of us on hate crimes and bullying. Naturally, the girls responsible for the hateful actions had their parents call them in sick for 2 days. We had a teacher who had an affair with a student. Weird part was the fact that he was married to one of his past students. The same week that the rumors arose, he retired. One time, some kid brought a gun to school and wasn't caught until the end of the day. Throughout the day, he was showing it off to people, and when he was taken away, he was sitting next to one of my best friends. She's still shaken up by this. Also, in middle school, some guy named Cookie stabbed someone. Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. Don't make friends with a kid named Cookie. Unless he's really smart, and into all the science and stuff. Story 45. The big thing at my high school was when one of my students unalived a middle school girl. Apparently, he was a pretty messed up dude prior to the incident, so some signs of instability were seemingly there. He and his girlfriend had broken up recently, so I don't know if that contributed to his behavior or not, but one night he had a little party at his house, and among the other high schoolers, he invited this middle school girl he had a thing for, I guess. I forget if he was a junior or senior. Supposedly, she was allowed to wander around late and whatnot, so it wasn't unusual that she wasn't home that night from what I heard. Anyways, the details are fuzzy, but apparently they were hanging out in his room and they were intoxicated on at least alcohol, and at one point he choked her. She didn't wake up and he had no idea if she was unconscious or dead, but he apparently leaned towards the latter and took her body to a dumpster nearby and set it on fire. We had so many cops at the school for a bit. Everyone heard what happened and it was just a huge, sad mess. He wound up unaliving himself in jail shortly after his arrest. He was even on self-unaliving watch, but somehow still managed to get it done. Poor girl had siblings and her brother went to our high school and was just so messed up over it. It was and is a dang awful incident. Story 46. A few come to mind. Side note, I'm currently a senior in high school. My freshman year, a great percentage of the students were in ISS for fighting. I've forgotten the percentage, but it was an obscene amount. Unsurprisingly, it was mostly over social media beef. Back in elementary school, a kid put a rock in a sock and threw it at someone's head. Weird part is, he was my friend, and I had no idea until I saw the principal dragging him from recess one day. He ended up transferring. Theater teacher had a heart attack and passed away in his mid-30s, leaving behind 2 toddlers and his wife. School was devastated. My dad actually knew him from a past job and went to his funeral. It was just sad. A senior was found dead one day and the family chose to not disclose the cause of death. Super sad, especially since I personally had some friends who were good friends with him since he was involved in band. Story 47. I went to a pretty typical football is life high school in the Deep South, USA. 1. The Sadie Hawkins dance was ended, and forever my sophomore year, grade 10 for you Eurogoons, because there was the most extreme girl fight ever. 6 or 7 girls involved, knives and glass, weave and blood everywhere. The school board blamed gang violence and stopped doing the dance after that. This was 1999. They still don't have it to this day. All the girls got expelled and one of them died like 2 years later for some kind of overdose. 2. Same year, a girl I went to middle school with was found dead at a local truck stop from an overdose. She went to a different high school, but the rumor was that she was hooking and had gotten 2 abortions in 2 years and she was 16. 3. A kid in my homeroom junior year turned up dead from huffing spray paint. He sat 2 seats in front of me. Nobody ever knew his name, but it effed me up for a while. 4. My chemistry teacher got drugged out by the cops right before I graduated because he got caught with a huge weed growing operation at his farm. Like millions of dollars. I'm not sure if he's still in jail or not. 5. Our basketball team won state my senior year. The fallout from that party afterwards saw 2 people shot and we ended up with 7 girls pregnant at graduation. Our school was ghetto as F. Story 48. So, the year or 2 before I started, a kid put chemicals in the kettle in the staff room with the full-on intention of poisoning the staff. Staff found it through the smell as it boiled fortunately. The kid was arrested, but no press involvement. In my lower 6th year, a large suitcase of bagged up cannabis, full suitcase worth, was found in the woods next to the school by some of the year 11s, who then tried to sell it on in school. Our biology teacher was head of year and told us in full detail just before he left our class with no supervision to go and deal with it. He would drink at the pub with us and didn't tend to hold back on details. He was the one that found the poison in the kettle incidentally. After half an hour of a group of 16 to 17-year-old boys waiting bored in a room, we decided to try and sell the story to a national newspaper. For cash, obviously, like good little entrepreneurs. A couple of us went and made the phone call to The Sun. Unfortunately, this was in the days before mobile phones, so we did it on the payphone next to the staff room where Dr. G, our biology teacher, was in the middle of sorting out the year 11s. He overheard the end of the conversation, forced us to ring off and then ring back and tell the newspaper it was all a lie. Gutted. We were going to be millionaires! Possibly. To be honest, he found it all very funny once we were marched back into the privacy of his classroom away from the other teachers. Year 11s got expelled. Not sure what happened with the suitcase. Knowing Dr. G, I'd imagine he managed to keep some of, if not all of it. Kid in the year before I started tripped whilst carrying a carving knife inside his pocket and stabbed himself to death in an area of the playground where no one was watching and he had no good reason to be with a carving knife in his pocket. This always sounded like a self-unaliving by the gunshots to the back of the head to me. Finally got rid of the crapbag PE teacher that should have gone years before. I just find the head's name funny in relation to the incident. There were a few deaths in the cars and people through drunk driving over the years I was there. There were loads of teachers and teacher affairs and a few teacher-pupil ones. Never me, unfortunately. All these were kept very quiet, and none of the teacher-pupil ones ended in the teacher leaving. One history teacher quite brazenly told our upper 6th class after being questioned about it that it wouldn't happen with us as none of us were man enough for her. This was after Dr. G had told us all about the affair. He really shouldn't have told us this stuff. Our dear old math teacher must have ended up on about 4 court cases before he finally got shifted out of the school, leaving finally after I had left. Guy was an abusive psycho. His classes were entertaining though, waterboarding kids in the sink, which he apparently had learned in his special forces days, or so he said, locking them in lockers for the lesson, randomly smashing people with meter rules, and in one lesson encouraging 2 kids to get up and fight each other. There was so much more in his lessons that I'm trying to remember now. It all seemed legit at the time somehow though. He was in a classroom in an outbuilding about 50 meters away from the nearest next building right at the periphery of the school. He had a laundry list of complaints against him, but was best friends with the headmaster. You never wanted detention alone with this guy. An idiot of a science teacher dropped too large of a dump of, I can't remember which, it might have been lithium, into water and blew the safety screens into the class. He kept his job, standard for the school. He was a short man syndrome idiot who once told me he could crush my skull like I had crushed a can while staring upwards at me. He was the twat that was supposed to be marshalling the cross-country course but let 2 of the forerunners run 2 miles down a path into town instead of the right way because they, I quote, hadn't asked him which way to go as they ran past. Gosh dang egomaniac. I think he expected them to bow down before his majesty and pay a silver tithe before passing. Fun times. Story 49. When I was in high school, Twitter added some kind of anonymous messaging thing. I don't know, I don't actually use Twitter enough to explain details. And some kid decided to set up an anonymous confessions account for the whole district. Anyone could send in a confession and all that would be attached once published was at the school they claimed to be from. So there were some things you can immediately guess, students admitting to have relations in classrooms, smoking behind the gym, etc. Then things got out of hand when someone confessed that they fantasized about their English teacher and self-pleasured under their desk in class. People began arguing about which of the 4 schools had the best students and best looking teachers, started witch hunts for the gays and lesbians on the football team and cheer squads, accused teachers of sleeping with certain students who wanted to bring their grades up, and of distributing drugs and alcohol to students. Eventually, the account got shut down and the police had to open all kinds of investigations. and supposedly one of the teachers was fired over it, but finished the year so the school wouldn't have to get a replacement for the last month or so. I knew some of the people who trolled the system and still talk about it with the ones I'm in touch with, but yeah, don't do that crap. Story 50. Late to the party, but here, if anyone is still reading this thread, every year, the junior year physics class took a field trip to Cedar Point. For those who don't know, Cedar Point is an amusement park in Sandusky, Ohio. My school was in a suburb of Detroit, so it is a relatively short bus ride. The trip is called Physics Day, and we were supposed to answer questions based on physics principles we learned throughout the year and apply them to the rides we were on. Since that was boring, pot brownies were distributed amongst the students, which was probably upwards of 100 students that each ate one. We had a graduating class of about 500 kids, so saying 20% of us took one does not seem like an overestimate. Well, one kid was not experienced with the marijuana and ended up having a panic attack after eating his share. While everyone is running off the bus and bolting into Cedar Point, he passed out, unconscious, on the bus steps. By the time teachers were able to wake him up and ask what happened, everyone was already in the park. The rest of the day was spent wrangling up the students while teachers were on a manhunt for the accused baker. Here's an article from the news about the incident. I can't imagine what it's like going to Hullo weekends while high. But side note, top thrill dragster. Story 51. A rumor went around that about 50 kids from another local boys' school with a reputation for being pretty effing rough were going to be coming down to the park next to ours on the last day of year 11 to start a massive brawl, the end of the year fight for no reason other than being idiots. A few of us had friends or friends of friends in that school and found out from them it was all bollocks. They got put round, but there were still the few idiot meatheads who believed the rumor and started trying to organize a group of kids to leave together and meet them head on, rather than be ambushed in small groups like they were planning. This inevitably led to a rumor at that school that we were going to be gathering in the park, then head over to their school to kick off. They reacted the same way and decided to meet our school head on in the park while we were all still gathering. What started as a nothing but bullcrap rumor became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the last thing I saw at high school was the entire teaching staff charging out into the park to desperately try to stop a fight involving around 80 to 90 kids. Luckily, only a few people got hurt, but not badly. A few little minor things kicked off away from the original scene, and that school permanently removed the gate that exited directly into the park. Story 52. It was midterms at my small, all-girls Catholic school, and there was a sudden rumor that there was fighting in the gym. It was between exam time, so my friends and I went to check it out, because nothing like that has ever happened at this high school. It was just a pair of portly girls throwing pens at each other, pretending to be ninjas from Naruto, and just saying that jujitsu and doing the hand motions and stuff. In hindsight, pretty effing hilarious, and I watched Naruto, so I recognized some of the things. Actual blood was drawn from the kunai, and my friends and I had a good laugh and went back to studying. We thought it was no big deal. Well, both of them got suspended because it was interpreted as violence against another student and missed the rest of their midterms. One of those girls was already failing all of her classes rather horrendously, and so was asked to not return for the spring semester after midterms. This girl then wrote up an in-detail bomb threat on social media, which was easily found, printed out, and presented to school faculty. We had never had a bomb threat before, so they evacuated the school at a moment's notice. In January, during a winter storm, none of us had coats. It took 2 hours. They brought in dogs and police and bomb suits. We weren't allowed to leave, go inside, or go to our cars. Spoiler, there was no bomb. It was just an angsty teenager's rant that had to be taken seriously because, well, it's America, and we have to take that crap seriously now. Story 53. A 7th grade girl walking to my high school disappeared on the way there one morning in 1998. At first, they thought she might have skipped school, but the police soon realized she'd been kidnapped. There were news crews outside our school. We had to be escorted out by staff after school. Our principal was on the TV. There were mannequins dressed in our school uniform placed at the railway stations she would have passed through. She was never seen again, and after a while it was assumed that she had been killed. Police had a suspect, but not enough evidence to lay charges. They found CCTV footage of her walking past a postal depot with a shadowy figure behind her, but where she should have walked past a second camera on the same property, she never made it that far. The suspect changed his name and moved away, but he was obviously unhinged. punished, and last year he finally turned himself in and confessed to having killed her the same day he took her. Apparently he wanted ransom money, but she must have struggled or tried to escape. He hasn't disclosed where her remains are, though there have been a couple of searches. Her parents never moved out of the house, hoping that she'd come home one day. Story 54. 5 major incidents, 2 scandalous, 2 saddening, and 1 drug underage drinking culture. 2 tragic deaths happened in consecutive years during my freshman and sophomore year in high school. I am now a senior. The first incident occurred during Christmas break. A male senior, let's call him Gale, and his family had spent their holiday in New Zealand. The daughter drove her family straight into a logging truck. The principal had called for a school-wide gathering at the gymnasium, which was where I had first heard the news. Gale was the only one in his family to survive the crash and was in critical condition. Everyone seemed to collectively mourn. The second incident occurred the following year, where a freshman committed self-unaliving. His justifications were unknown, but his family circumstances, father as a West Point alumni, and pressure from school, advanced placement courses, gives more insight. He plummeted from a 30-story bedroom window. Scandalous and frivolous words to describe the following 2 incidents. The first is about a science teacher and a women's volleyball team. Let's call him Owens. Basically, he was asked to leave due to mass reports of him being too touchy with his students and athletes. The second was regarding leaked pictures that were inappropriate that was spread school-wide due to the popularity of the couple. They were put on the yearbook for best couple as well. Basically, nude photos and videos spread like wildfire. The last one is the bane of all administrative figures. It was a huge story during my junior year and even made it to local news. The legal drinking age in my country is 18. An area that is frequented by students of my school is notorious for serving those under the age limit. This has become a culture alongside drug abuse. Simply put, a freshman's mother had gone through her son's phone and picked up an ecstasy LSD purchase and experienced chats between students. The freshman snitched on an account of a plea deal to keep this off his transcript. He transferred schools the following year and a few juniors were expelled. The news report criticized how the school administration handled the drug issues, specifically how they reported this to authorities months after. Story 55. Cracks knuckles. 9th grade, I went to a private school in California that leased part of its complex it shared with another private school, including an infant daycare center. My friend was roughhousing with another guy and set off the fire alarm. All the schools in the complex evacuated. I remember we were in the evac zone watching as the nursery staff were taking trips evacuating cribs. Boy, were they upset. They had just put the babies to sleep for nap time. My friend, same friend, and I had stink bomb capsules left over from a weekend school trip to San Francisco Chinatown. We broke one off in math class and the entire building had to be evacuated. 10th grade, during a chem lab experiment, my lab partner and I filled the entire class with thick white smoke. 11th grade, I was shipping off to boarding school. We had cabins instead of dorms and RAs to use CB radios to communicate with each other. One night my cabin mate got hold of the CB radio and said in his very best pervy voice, think Mr. Van Driesen from Beavis and Butthead, how he wanted a big bag of juicy bag of idiots right about now. In seconds, an angry mob of female rays burst through the door and hauled him to disciplinary. I was holding my stomach on the floor. I was laughing so hard. A lot of fights. 12th grade, a lot of RAs got fired for effing each other on campus. A lot of students got suspended for effing each other. Owner of the school's son backed his truck through the wall of the dining hall. That was pretty impressive. And I found my best friend hanging from the shower rod. He had been manic depressive and off his meds. He survived though, and we are friends to this day. Story 58. Oh geez. First, our student body president and a few other kids robbed several local businesses throughout the school year, mostly drive-thrus and small markets. They robbed a restaurant, armed with a handgun, and one of the kids shot himself in the nut while making their escape. The whole thing began to unravel at this point, with several arrests being made. The student body president fled the state and country, meeting up with a bunch of senior class in Mexico to party, and finally settled in Texas or something, working for a couple at their store. He made it on America's Most Wanted and ended up turning himself in. The same year, and completely unrelated, there was this new senior who seemed nice enough. He had a really flashy car and a receding hairline, which everyone was too nice to say anything about. until someone was looking through a 15-year-old yearbook and found him in it. The dude was wanted for check fraud in California, so he hid from the feds in his old high school posing as a student, a trick he clearly learned from an early 90s Hollywood movie. High school was effing surreal, man. Story 59. Last year, me and my friend organized a full-fledged war in our school. The only thing was it was with milk. It started off a few months prior. I decided it would be funny to throw a water bottle into my PE locker room with the lid open and get some people wet. It hit someone and he threw it back. It went back and forth for a few minutes until there was no water left. The next day, my friend threw 2 water bottles, and we were returned with 3, and it slowly ramped up for the next few months. It's now a week before Christmas break, and we meet up with people on the other side of the locker room. My friend and I present the idea of a temporary truce to stock up for a 3-day war that will happen in the last 3 days of the spring break. They agree, and we split off for the vacation. January of this war, and the race is on. Recruitment began immediately, and we recruited 5 people in 1 day. We ordered all our soldiers to save the milks and juices and put them in an old locker I remembered the code for. Within the first few days, we had over 50 milks and juices that had been recruited and 10 or more people. Fast forward a week and we made a breakthrough. We discovered the barrel of peaches served at lunch were the best weapon ever. Small, sticky, and easy to obtain and explode. These little guys were the perfect weapon. 2 months go by. It has now been 2 months of a truce and we were ready for all heck to break loose. Hundreds of old milks, juices, and peach barrels inside lockers waiting for second period and around 75 people in total ready to cause chaos. We all agreed that if things go bad, everyone try to save as much as we could by stuffing it in our backpacks. Everyone rushed into the locker room and waited for the bell to ring. It rang and it was time. The lockers opened up and the first milk was opened. It was chucked straight into the ceiling, exploding and raining down into my aisle. A kid next to me fought back and threw a juice at the front row, and then I stopped for a few seconds. Suddenly a wave of rotten milk, juice, peaches, Gatorade, you name it, was thrown. We fought back. For the next few minutes, it was a flurry of smells and splashes. We probably got halfway through the supply until the teachers arrived. When they entered, they were met with what was a hellish landscape of food and milk. They told everyone to get out, and we went to Plan B, storing everything. Within a minute, everything was out of the lockers, just in time for the teachers to not know what had happened. We all walked out and stayed outside. They started questioning people about what had happened, and everyone said they didn't do it, which was great. We didn't do PE that day. We just sat outside for 30 minutes, and when it was over, we got around 5 people to put around 100 milks and tons of juices and other food behind a gate that was easy to open, but hidden, as we didn't want our stash found. The second day of the Great Milk Wars, we returned the next day to second period, but something was different. They closed the locker room, and there were teachers everywhere on the court doing backpack searches. It was a nightmare, and a few people got caught. We met with a person from the other side, and they said tomorrow when everything dies down. We agreed and continued PE as normal in our horribly hot clothes. The final day. That Friday was raining. The locker room was still closed, so we decided to do it in the middle of the yard. The other group stashed their stuff in a bunch of drains. We had bags of things for the 20-plus people participating on our side. Finally, we set a trap. We had a guy who always ditches go out of the yard and throw a milk inside. That way the monitors would leave and we could have a war. It worked. I threw the first milk, and within a matter of minutes the ground was soaked with water, milk, juice, and whatever else. Probably up to 100 people were involved out of the 125-ish people there. Loads of people got wet, but it was something of chaotic beauty. Just seeing hundreds of milks and juices in the sky coming at you and your friends and your foes, and everyone was just magnificent. I still consider it the best memory from that school. This was so beautifully written, like a HBO documentary I feel like I have to see now. The Great Milk Wars? I'm all in, guys. I'm all in. Story 60. For us, it was the in-class self-unaliving of one of my classmates. He had been bullied on and off for the whole time he was in high school with us. He was foreign and more or less introverted. He had apparently had some difficulties at home, and the stress of school likely put him over the edge. He came to English class, first period, and put a large glass of water on his desk. He added some powdered cyanide, purchased legally from a jewelry wholesale warehouse, as it is common in the trade as a cleaner, and drank it down. It is not like in the movies. Cyanide is a highly difficult death due to the corrosive attributes of the chemical. The nature of the incident did not allow the PE teacher and the few volunteer EMT firefighter students that were present to administer any life-saving techniques. They ambulanced him off, but there was no saving him. The English teacher retired immediately, and the PE teacher told us that he was overcome with guilt about the helplessness of the situation. This was 25 years ago, and oftentimes I wish that I had stood up for him more. Perhaps I could have helped. We had grief counselors meeting with students for a few weeks after, and the entire senior class planted a tree in his memory in one of the courtyards of the school. They searched his locker, and there was a stack of books about self-unaliving and a few different item sheets from chemical companies. Story 61. In middle school, a film crew came to make a documentary about bullying following a specific student in my class. We all had to sign off on sheets and whatever. Well, during filming, the bullying witnessed against this kid was so bad, the film crew decided they needed to intervene. They approached the vice principal, who was in charge of the anti-bullying policies. They showed her the footage, and she went on about, "Oh, they're good kids when I'm there," or something of that nature. This was all in the documentary. The year when the film was finally released, there was a massive viewing at a large local theater with a discussion with involved parties like the filmmakers, school board directors, and the vice principal in the movie. After the film ended, the discussion began. Basically, the vice principal was attacked by the audience and had to be escorted out of the building by guards. She lost her job and got moved to a small elementary school, the one my brother attended. I don't feel bad for her though. I wasn't in the movie at all. Thank God, no one needs to see that. But I had severe bullying problems to the point where my personal safety was at risk, and she was the person who was supposed to handle the problem. She told my mother this kid, threatened to follow me home and beat me and SAA me, wasn't permitted to go to our high school, and that she was filing everything with the police and we'd hear from them in the next few months. The kid was at my high school the next year. The principals and counselors had never heard anything of it, and the police hadn't either. She just told us she did these things so we would leave her alone. Story 62. A bus driver turned out to be a predator. He was a real cool guy, taught the kids to play guitar. I thought he was awesome. Kids were jealous when he would have another kid on his MySpace top 8 friends. I started finding it a little weird when I went to my cousin's concert a few towns over and he was there with a kid from my school. I won a guitar and he kept offering to come over to my house when my mom wasn't home to teach me. A few months later, he got busted pretending to be a 12-year-old girl online to get boys to send him chicken pics. Pretty weird. Edit. Just looked up the case and the kid he took to the concert also accused him of SAing him. Another thing that I just remembered. When I was in high school, a guy on the football team tried to get a boy he was babysitting him to give him some relations. He got arrested, but I'm pretty sure he was never convicted. Another guy got arrested for essaying kids in Africa on a missionary trip. What the F was up with my school? Story 63. Too late, but here it goes. Had one kid throw acid, stolen from a science lab lock-up, into the face of another kid. Had a fight end by somebody shoving an arm through the wire mesh encased safety glass windows in the stairwells. There was blood everywhere. They canceled classes on that floor of the building for the rest of the day. Had a school-wide walkout start after an assembly was cut short and some kids threw some chairs at the windows of the cafeteria. Half the town's cops showed up in riot gear. Had a couple kids attempting to order firearms online. Every 10 years or so, without fail, we have a kid that falls dead to train tracks. The kid killed while I was in high school was actually hit by the train and thrown over the side of an overpass. His body was hit by a passing car before hitting the ground. That car was driven by another student. Had 2 high school teachers who couldn't be in the same building because of restraining orders due to their relationship getting violent. Had a 2-month period where we received a bomb threat once a week like clockwork. Middle school had a drug head stumble up and out of the brook behind the school and fall down the back stairs to the school. Split his head open and left brains all over the steps. Kids had to enter and exit through the front entrance that day. I'm sure there are more. Edit, there are more. Kindergarten. Yes, kindergarten students found a bag of drugs in the teacher's desk and notified the principal. I still can't decide what bothers me more, the blow or the fact that a bunch of kindergartners knew what it was. Story 64. This was 10 years ago when I was in 8th grade, but a guy 2 years above me unalived his brother, and one of the teachers at the school helped him dump the body outside of school hours, obviously. Apparently, the guy had dirt on the teacher about him being an Imperial KKK member and had threatened to make it public. They both got locked up, and the guy had apparently been putting together a hit list of students he wanted to unalive. He used to bring a sword to school disguised as a walking stick, and the police found that he had been planning a massacre at our school. Probably the biggest news of our small country town. Also, this was kept very quiet. Someone in my grade had rooted one of his teachers on a ski trip. She got sacked. He stayed though. I remember weird stuff going on, like him giving her a hickey in class one day. The teacher pulled a couple of us aside who noticed and said not to say anything. Oh well, she's gone now. Story 65. So right as the 8th grade was wrapping up, we were having our last pacer of the year in PE class. Nobody really cared about trying hard since it was almost the end of the year, so everyone got out pretty fast. There was only one kid left running the pacer, and he was going extra hard. All eyes were on him, everyone else was on the bleachers. All of a sudden, as the entire class was watching, and not just his class, there were multiple classes participating in this pacer, it was a filled gymnasium. The kid runs past the middle of the gym floor, time seemed to slow down, and everyone witnessed a couple turd chunks sprinkled onto the floor and out of his gym shorts. The kid crapped his pants in the middle of the gym with an entire filled gym watching in the 8th grade. After that, the teachers evacuated everyone out of the gymnasium and gloved up to clean up his feces that was now smeared on the gym floor. He immediately tried to pass it off as dirt, but he's not that slick. I'm now in senior year and people are still talking about this. What a wild ride. Story 66. My middle-class suburban public high school of about 2,300 kids had a few, but I don't think they were too bizarre. We had a series of about 20 fights occur in a week, one in which our principal tried to break up the fight and ended up getting punched in the face. He took the kid who punched him to court. That week became known as Fight Week and was addressed on the morning announcements repeatedly for the rest of the month. We got a new district superintendent who immediately blew $1 million of the school budget money on fixing our tennis courts, which were on a slope. When they finished the redevelopment, the courts were still on a slope. He also invited his entrepreneur friend to host mandatory assemblies at the beginning of his first year on the job. The guy wasn't an entrepreneur, he was just a greedy loan shark who preyed on lower-class business starters in third-world countries and took pride in it. Later on that year, a bunch of teachers went on strike because the superintendent had been harassing staff members and unfairly managing, treating, and paying staff. He was also given a bunch of crap from both parents and teachers alike about how he was doing a terrible job at managing the school district. He was fired and replaced with our former superintendent, who was supposed to retire a year beforehand. Honestly, my middle school had some more notable incidents. Same school district, separate school. A drug ring was dug up between a bunch of 7th graders. Mostly just weed and acid, but like suburban 7th graders? What the F? A teacher who was infamous for being a female dog literally flipped a table on a kid, physically injuring him, and somehow didn't get fired. My 6th grade science teacher stalked me and a bunch of my friends on social media, and no one found out about it until after she resigned. She was creepy as crap in class and knew a lot more about me and other kids than we let on about, so we probably should have realized earlier. That's all I got. New Jersey's weird. Story 67. I already commented once, but I just remembered something that happened to my senior year. We had this thing called AA, not Alcoholics Anonymous, but advisor-advisee. We met once a week for about 30 minutes. Just imagine homeroom and you have the general idea. So I'm sitting in AA, playing on my phone or whatever, and I start hearing screaming from across the hall. Teachers start running in the direction of the screaming, and of course students are starting to fill up the hall. I can see into the room across the way where the screaming is coming from. I see a kid fall out of his seat and the teacher run over to him. None of this was clear until later, but a student who had also already joined the army had brought some sort of vape pen or something with fake weed or some other drug. 2 guys smoked it and went crazy. There wasn't any permanent damage to either of them, but they all went to jail for a few hours, and I'm pretty sure this guy isn't in the army anymore. Story 68. Too many incidents at my high school for one answer. A teacher was fired for coming out as transgender. Private and otherwise progressive Catholic school, a music teacher was let go for having an extramarital affair in the shared department office, which was unrelated to another alleged essay scandal. An ex-teacher who was fired for creating a cyberbullying website wrote a self-published Amazon book about these, and the school more broadly, trying to be in the style of muckraking journalism. She maliciously outed another teacher for being gay, despite being a member of the LGBT community herself, which drew the chagrin of a lot of the alumni. She camped out on the alum Facebook page, writing angry things about the school and trying to drum up publicity for herself. She even wrote herself a Wikipedia entry praising her work. Another alumni discovered that she was making fake profiles to like and respond to her posts. Stock image profile pictures and everything, and we outed her for that. Haven't heard from her since. Edit. Oh, and how could I forget? My school was the U.S. epicenter of the swine flu in 2009. Some girls brought it back from Mexico on spring break. Swine '09. Story 69. My high school. Back in about '08 or '09, someone left a jacket or something on top of a light in the theater so people didn't realize it was on. The light caused the jacket to catch fire, which spread to the entire theater, causing it to burn down. A teacher also died in 9/11. These are some urban legends, can neither confirm nor deny. There's a community college that has a building at the high school for some reason. The computers there don't have any filters on them. You might see where this is going. A few years before I attended there, a student went to the building, went to the adult content site, and started pleasuring. And that's the story of Whack Off Wally. Someone ran through the science building that there was a dihydrogen monoxide in the sinks, causing people to freak out. That's a fancy scientific way of saying that there's water in the sinks. People allegedly died in the theater, which I used to laugh at as just an urban legend until I saw my friend run out of the room with the stairs to the booth, where lighting and sound equipment is stored and used in the theater, visibly shaken, claiming he heard footsteps up there. Since him, me, and another friend, who was next to me when it happened, were there and none of us could have been the cause, I decided to go in there alone. After a couple minutes, I heard what was clearly footsteps upstairs. Again, just the three of us, and none of us could have been the cause as the sound was clearly from up in the booth. Story 70. Somebody started writing really generic threats on a bathroom wall, like 4chan edgelord school shooter jokes basically. "All you posers are gonna die" was the first. Nothing came of it, so who I assumed to be the same guy wrote a bomb threat on the same spot. Never saw the writing, but it was enough to send the entire school onto the field for 3 hours while a bomb squad came and searched the entire school with a dog. It was 90 degrees and we weren't allowed to leave after school ended. And it seems kinda dumb that they would put everyone in the same place for a bomb threat. But nothing came of it, other than a bomb squad and a bunch of cops with rifles ushering everyone onto the field. They kept putting up bomb threats, but people started hiding them instead of telling the principal. I guess he was a senior because he was never caught. And the next year, the bomb threats stopped. Story 71. This is only a short time ago, but it's not too bad, so it's a minor incident. A couple weeks ago, a freshman brought a ferrocerium rod survival bracelet and a cheap pocket knife to school. I'd seen him with his pocket knife before in class, but I figured I didn't need to snitch because a teacher would see and do something, but they didn't. So, one day he decides to bundle up some paper and a greasy cafeteria paper bowl and then strike the ferro rod with his knife, creating sparks. This went on for a while, gaining a crowd of gawking students until one student decided to tell the vice principal. The VP came out and talked to the kid. Nobody seemed mad from what I saw, and the kid was taken to the office with all his stuff, the VP holding the knife, ferro rod, and potential fuel. He did not attend school for about a week, then returned. I hear he didn't get expelled because he was reasonable and easy to deal with, and did not put up a fight with the suspension. Story 72. Not my school, but one in my district. There was a youth center right next to the school that got shot up a few times in broad daylight. A convenience store a couple more addresses down was robbed in the middle of the day. Someone just walked in and shot the clerk. Same day, different neighborhood. A nightclub that we called Club Bunker because of its iron door and singular tiny window was shot up as the door was open. I know a few people in the parking lot were hit and one waitress inside was killed. I don't know the death count. My school was in a poor neighborhood, so it was branded as the ghetto school, but we did not get the worst of it. Another school wasn't a bad school necessarily, it was just the big school in town, and so it had a lot of troubled and unsupervised kids, plus a lot of gangs in the area. Story 73. Girl from theater class, let's call her Matilda, didn't get a role she was really gunning for. The girl who got the part, let's call her Hillary, wasn't exactly nice about it. Matilda got in her head that if Hillary got sick, they would have no choice but to let her perform in Hillary's place. So one morning at practice, she brought some bleach to school, told Hillary there were no hard feelings about her getting the part, and offered to go buy her a Mountain Dew as a peace offering. She left class, grabbed a Mountain Dew from one of the vending machines, went into the ladies' room with her backpack, and poured a little bleach into the Mountain Dew. Very fortunately for our friend Hillary, bleach has a very distinctive smell. And furthermore, she noticed the bottle had already been opened. They pretty quickly figured out what was going on from there. The principal pulled some camera footage and they found the bleach. Either it was in Matilda's locker or in the trash, can't remember which, but the camera footage confirmed she had it in her possession. The police were called, the drink was analyzed in a lab, the whole shebang. Anyway, that story lived on in infamy for a few years after the incident. I remember one kid tried to make a "Don't drink the Mountain Dew" banner for a pep rally once. Matilda ended up on the news, got sent to the district's alternative school, and was not allowed to walk for graduation. I didn't hear much about it beyond that. Not sure if she went to jail, but I would think yes. Hey, take it to a guy who went to school for musical theater. They are very passionate people. Story 74. Went to a public high school in a fairly depressed urban city, so I have several stories from the lawless wasteland that it was. First one I can think of is that the school got canceled one day due to a dead body being found in the parking lot near the dumpster. Neighborhood guy OD'd. Most of us had never heard of him. They found Amanda Berry and Gina de Jesus, who were from my area, in my senior year as well. On a heavier note, in my senior year, a girl I knew in the year behind me was unalived by her boyfriend. 16 years old, sweet and popular, soccer player, huge group of friends and family. We shared a lot of the close friends. Her boyfriend was some 17-year-old loser she'd been on and off with who thought he was tough crap and had accused her of cheating because he thought he saw another boy leaving her home. Could have easily been one of her many cousins or friends. He lured her out to her backyard in the middle of the night, pushed her down, and shot her several times in the head and neck. Her father ran out and held his daughter as she died in the snow. Turned out she was 15 weeks pregnant with this kid's child. He got caught almost immediately, smirked remorsefully as her father, who could barely speak English, broke down on the stand during his testimony. He received 33 years to life. There's a first 48 episode about it all. I've never heard my crazy school as silent as the day after she died, and the entire school basically was excused to go to her funeral. Some of the most heartbreaking memories of my teenage years came from that day. Story 75. We had a shooting range and had shooting competitions at our high school. This was more or less in the 1994-1996 timeframe. Students practiced weekly, and it was a tightly run endeavor as real ammunition was used. Something went wrong and a girl accidentally got shot in the upper leg. Can't recall the specifics as if it was done by herself or another student, but it was an unfortunate accident. The bullet went through a major artery and she was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately passed away soon after. Her brother was in my class year and stayed quite close to me, and we were a tight community. It was a terrible loss and shocked everyone. I haven't thought about this for years. Still feel an immense sadness after all this time. Needless to say, the shooting range was closed and the teacher responsible was devastated. I think he left the school a few years later. Story 76. This will probably get buried, but I have several. 1. In middle school, the janitor got busted for selling drugs to 6th graders, which led to 2. Random locker searches. This one girl freaked out because she had her gang-affiliated bandana in her locker, so she took it to the bathroom and set it on fire in the trash can. I happened to look through the door window to the hallway in time to see her sprint down the hall with 3 school resource officers chasing her, and our morbidly obese assistant principal waddle by a few moments later. The bandana burner became a school legend/joke for years. 3. We had 3 bomb threats in 1 week, 2 at my high school and 1 at the middle school down the street. 4. Absolutely no one went to school one day when I was in 11th grade because a rumor spread on Twitter that a local gang threatened to come to the school. Before school started, people legit were walking to the door while looking at their phones, then whipping around and running back to their cars. 5. Saddest one? A kid in my grade junior year got too far in debt with his drug dealers, so he tried to rob a bank. When the police surrounded him, we all suspect that he couldn't handle how far deep he was in, so he unalived himself. It was the only self-unaliving out of the three that I was in school for that the administration didn't ask a moment of silence for, and people were pretty upset. We wore orange, his favorite color, and ribbons for a month, and someone made enough orange rubber bracelets to pass out to the entire graduating class a year later so he could be with us at graduation. Story 77. Oh boy, there are several from several schools. At one school, there was a fight every day for the first 2 weeks. A girl was caught giving some relations to a guy in class. A girl used to flash the entire class while the teacher watched. 2 kids got caught smoking in the cafeteria. One guy brought a small barbecue pit in his truck and cooked hot dogs during lunch. The principal was caught touching girls inappropriately. At another school, me and my friends led a school-wide protest against somebody getting a detention they didn't deserve. A girl was caught hiding a large bag of drugs in one of the teacher's cabinets. One teacher used to smoke weed in his closet with students. A deer jumped through the window of the junior high school and had to be wrestled out by the maintenance guy. And at my elementary school, there were bats everywhere. So many that the music classroom couldn't be used anymore because of the guano. My mom worked there, and I would help patrol the halls in the morning with an electric fly swatter to pop bats out of the air. You know, somehow amongst all the illegal and disgusting things that were going on, the guy that was cooking hot dogs with a barbecue in his truck just doesn't seem to fit in all the way. Story 78. Maybe not the incident, but definitely one that caused a stir for a few years was one I was directly involved in. It was the late 90s, and the internet was just becoming a thing for my rural high school. My friends and I had websites we created with Angelfire, but one friend in particular made one that was focused on our school. It had lists of people we liked, people we didn't, hot female classmates, etc. There were no hit list or anything like that. However, he did use some graphics of animated skeletons and stuff like that. The site existed for months and only a few knew about it. Then Columbine happened. I don't know who told a teacher about the site, but soon all of my friends and I were rounded up and questioned by the sheriff and school administration. The local TV station ran 2 headline stories about the site and strongly insinuated that we were going to do something similar to what happened in Colorado, including showing footage of the massacre cut into images of the website. In the end, no charges or anything was filed, but for a while afterwards, if someone asked what school I went to and told them, I would always be asked if I was one of those kids that was planning on shooting the school. There were also parents who refused to take their kids back to the school. I used to have a copy of the news story on VHS, but it's long been lost. However, it's something I'll never forget. Story 79. Okay, so I actually have some stories to contribute here, even though I'm late to the post. My school had to get the FBI involved in a district-wide scandal. I went to a magnet school that housed an engineering and medical academy that was incredibly hard to get into. Some of the kids in these academies were actually able to hack into the grading system that our district uses, and they were able to change grades for people going all the way back to freshman year. Going into super competitive colleges, a lot of kids wanted in on it and paid these students to manipulate their grades. The people doing this actually ended up making enough money that one of the kids bought a BMW and just showed up at home one day with it and told his parents' friends let him borrow it. This was such a huge thing that other students from other schools found out and they started getting in it as well. For that entire year, tons of seniors got effed over with their grades and rankings. Eventually, they were all found out and expelled, but the FBI had to be involved due to the fact that the database that was hacked contained the social security numbers of all the students district-wide. Pretty crazy. The year before I entered as a freshman in high school, this same school had the Powerade incident. A guy bought a Powerade from a vending machine and 2 popped out. A girl passed by and asked if she could have it. He said yes, but only if she gave him something in return. So they went into the library and he got something by the windows, of course, where people took videos and pictures. And that's how we got the Powerade banned from our school. That same year, a person put a sign over the main water fountains in the hallway that said, "Whites only." Mind you, there were only like 20 white people in the school, and we had a total of nearly 2,000 students, mostly African American and Hispanics. My freshman year, I witnessed an ending to a gangbang in a band practice room when I was trying to find a room to practice in. Saw one Hispanic guy get out, then another, until finally the girl left. This happened a few times a month. Before school even started, we had summer band camp. The first time we entered the band area, we found a condom on the ground. During a band lock-in, a freshman flute girl gave all the guys on the drum line some favors and proceeded to stop us from ever having lock-ins. High school was fun. Story 80. I've got a few. 1. The summer before I started 6th grade, one of the kids in my class was killed in a car accident. He and his family were driving from New York to Georgia and were involved in a 10-car pileup over the 4th of July weekend. His younger brother broke both of his legs, and his mom was in a coma for a week and had slight brain damage. That was thankfully temporary. His was the first funeral I really remember going to, and it was a circus. Because the mother was still in the coma, the father had the entire thing recorded for her so she could have some form of closure. I think she woke up from the coma a couple of days after the funeral. The look on the father's face as he walked behind his son's casket will forever stay with me. 2. In 7th grade, one of my friends disappeared and no one knew what happened to her for a couple of weeks. Mid-February, her mother showed up at school and pulled her out of the classroom, which was odd because normally parents would go to the office and they would have someone come for the kid. My teacher tried to stop the mother from taking her because it was against policy to allow a student to leave the classroom without permission from the office, but the mother claimed that she had to take her to a doctor's appointment. The next day, neither my friend nor her sister showed up for class, and apparently the teachers were concerned, so they tried to reach the family. Eventually, it came out that the family was switching schools, but there were rumors that my friend was being abused by her stepfather. We never found out if that was true, but thinking back on things she did and said back then, I absolutely believe that she was being essayed. 3. Earlier in 7th grade, my school hosted a fashion show at a local restaurant, and a bunch of guys from class got drunk off their parents' wine. One kid, though, thought it would be a grown-up thing to steal an entire bottle of wine from the restaurant bar. The idiot stood outside and drank the entire thing and came to school the following afternoon completely hungover. He came to school with about an hour left of the day. The guys all ended up having to do community service. At the same event, a bunch of the 8th grade girls were caught smoking in the women's restroom. All of us that were there were pulled out of class the next day to see if we had been smoking too or if we'd seen anything. Honestly, if anyone had seen or done anything, I doubt they would have fessed up. I'm shocked that the restaurant allowed the school to keep hosting the fashion show there. 4. Freshman year of high school, a senior was killed. He'd been hanging out with his cousin and was mistaken for the cousin by some guy who wanted revenge over his girlfriend leaving him for the cousin. The guy was shot in the eye and never had a chance. I believe his father was the one who found him. I remember the day after he was killed, the parents came to the school to clean out his locker, and we were told we needed to be respectful to them if we were to see them in the halls. 5. Sophomore year of high school, different school, a fire was started and the school was evacuated. At first, we thought it was just another fire drill, but within a few minutes, we found out what really happened. Despite having fire drills multiple times a year since we were 5 years old, people panicked. The teachers and administration just wanted kids to get to safety, so they told us to just keep walking to get as far from the school as possible. Eventually, the vice principal got in her car and drove up and down the block, telling us to go to the junior high across the street from our school. But before getting word, some of the kids decided it would be a good idea to hold up a Wendy's and a local supermarket. From what I heard, they only wanted food from the Wendy's, and being broke high school kids thought that stealing it was a good plan. For the next week, the police were pulling kids out of class to find out what happened. 6. Junior year of high school, some kids from the rival high school managed to get past the school scanners and stabbed some poor kid in the hallway. I believe he was okay, but he had to get stitches in his face. 7. Senior year, a new principal was hired, and even before the school year started, there were rumors that she was our very own Umbridge. This was the year Harry Potter 5 came out in hardcover. Sadly, the rumors were true. This woman was absolutely awful. She policed the teachers, would show up in the classrooms without telling teachers that she was going to observe them, and expelled students for the slightest things. The worst, however, was that she was a racist piece of crap, which was definitely a problem since the school was 75% black and Latino. Everyone knew she treated the minority kids horribly and told the security guards to give those kids a hard time when they came into school in the morning. Some guards were even given permission to perform cavity searches on students. However, they never did it because they knew this woman was a racist psycho. Anyway, one of the most popular teachers in the school disagreed with her over her policies and she fired him. There were rumors that she used racial language about him to other teachers, and so complaints were made to the school board, and the NAACP even came to school to demand her resignation. There was a student walkout, and whenever people saw her in the hallways, they would throw fruit from the cafeteria at her. She eventually resigned, and we got a new principal, who was awesome and absolutely not racist. Story 81. In high school, around grade 10, a new website popped up after the success of the effing series Gossip Girl. As the namesake is, this website was about gossiping and telling dirty secrets about people at the school. Everybody wanted to find out who they were. The principal and other teachers got involved and were looking for the perpetrators. A lot of people got secrets found out, and even more people got some more or less made up crap spread about them. Well, I was a more or less tech-savvy guy and decided to try and F their little operation. I opened the login surface of the crappy web hosting they set up at. It was a blog engine like Blogspot or what, and tried a few passes until one of them worked. I think it was either the email address backwards or some basic stuff like password. Anyway, I managed to get in there and just basically delete the whole show. I, of course, told everyone that it was me, and I had to reap in that sweet, sweet praise. Well, obviously, the Gossip Girls also got ear that it was me who brought down their sweet little operation of shaming people and being general a-holes on the internet. Being an a-hole on the internet was a mainstream thing. So they posted a wanted poster on their freshly set up website offering a reward for any dirt on me. Me, being an excellent effing kid, had nothing they could find out about. So I wasn't particularly worried. Apart from, now the whole school was looking at me, the hacker man, to bring their hateful website down again. Except I couldn't because they set up a different password. I told people it was hard to do so because their DNS keeps changing their static IP, so I have to catch the moment they log in or the keychain would get encrypted. And whatever tech-sounding bullcrap I could say to not reveal, yeah, I guessed their password and they changed it. At this point, the police started getting involved to figure out who was doing this because it caused some trouble I don't remember exactly. But I got lucky. Somebody actually shut the website off, or they got scared of the police and never claimed it. So I was seen as the guy who took down the Gossip Girls. Except I didn't. Not the second time, at least. It was almost not worth it for the "Can you hack XYZ Facebook for me?" messages and requests I kept receiving well until I graduated. Story 82. I have so many. 1, my cousin got his head stuck in a school chair in elementary school and they had to call the fire department to cut him out of the chair, and then 4 years later, when explaining to the new kid how it happened, did it again and had to call the fire rescue once more. 2, kid during language class wondered if Bath and Body Works hand sanitizer tasted different than just normal hand sanitizer because it smelled different, so he drank each kind and almost died, and had to get his stomach pumped in the parking lot in the back of an ambulance. For those who are curious, there is no difference in taste, and I quote, "They both taste like effing crap." 3. A kid in my art class broke his pottery project and used it as a shank, which resulted in another kid having to have like 50 stitches and have a massive scar on his arm. They were best friends at the time, and he didn't think it was that sharp. 4. 2 girls got in a fight during lunch, and one threw blue slushy in her and stained her bleach blonde hair blue. She grabbed her by the back of her pants and threw her down the hallway like Miss Trunchbull from Matilda and that blonde girl. And the teachers just stood by and watched until the principal came running in and yelled at them. 5. I went to a rural school, and so when a kid went to move his hunting rifles from the back of his truck to the cab of his truck, the school was locked down and he was arrested. 6. In elementary school, a kid in my class stuck a paperclip in the light socket and blew the fuse to the entire school, resulting in a power outage. 7. There were 2 kids that hid food from their lunch in their lockers all 4 years of school. One kid had a chicken nugget from freshman year in high school and still has it even though we're seniors in college. And the other kid has a carton of milk but spilled it our senior year during locker cleanout, resulting in multiple people throwing up from the smell. 8. My ex-boyfriend's best friend was wanted by the U.S. Marshals for SA, failure to appear, and giving illegal substances to a minor. And yet my ex still didn't believe me when I told him he was an a-hole when I first met him. Yes, he was the reason we broke up. Edit. I thought of more. 9. We had multiple deaths from car accidents. One died sophomore year for me, then one died senior year with his driving instructor. One got into an accident on homecoming and lived but had severe brain injuries. And just recently, a girl from my class was murdered. Story 83. Oh boy, more like incidents for me. First of all, names have been changed, don't worry. Second, I should mention this is a special needs school. I'm SB. Most notably, there was a plate incident. We had just came back in from recess. All grades do recess at my school, and we did independent reading. This kid, Jeff, suddenly said, "Kill Carson." Then he started screaming, "No big, it's a normal for our school. We get noise-canceling headphones, and it all seemed good for the moment." Teachers took him behind what I call the wall, where they move kids to calm down. There was a placement error, though. Our class had a microwave and a cheap glass plate right by the wall. I hear glass break, and I see a huge shard come straight for my leg. If I didn't lift my legs in time, I probably would have no foot. Carson ran to the corner and started crying. We ended up having to go into the hallway for 45 minutes. This ate up half of our social studies. Too long didn't read a kid broke a plate after suggesting murder. I've got way more, though. There was another time where Jeff put glue on a kid's seat. Then he sprayed cleaner in his face. He revealed the glue to me when I walked in the aftermath. This is a different school, but also the same school. It's difficult to explain. Don't ask. The point is now we have different math and reading classes. And he was just laughing to himself and said, "Hey, Shadow." And I put glue on Danny's desk. I told the teacher because I'm a snitch, but they made him clean his desk. That's when Jeff saw Danny and thought, "Spray in his face." I've got way more though, but I'm too lazy right now. I could make my own post with all my school stories. Story 84. Me and a buddy, in the height of our incognito, vigilante, secret squirrel tech fascination, got a hold of spreadsheets off a computer from our high school server room that contained the username and password credentials of every student in the district, from grades 5 to 12. These credentials were the same across several platforms, but the big three were Schoolology, PowerSchool, and most of all, Google. Our district was, and still is, in the Stone Age as far as the tech department, so unsurprisingly, our intrusion went without notice by the administration. Even as I took the opportunity to dole out well-deserved justice to local idiots. Most people never found out what it feels like to make a Google Slides presentation disappear the day before it's due in response to a douche cheating on a close friend. The power didn't last, and for a really crappy reason. Said buddy over time got bored with just having the information. He didn't have any bones to pick and didn't have the same fun I did, and started walking up to random people, making sure he had the people he wanted to impress in his crowd, and raid off their student ID and 4-digit passcode. Obviously, there were certain students who did not take kindly to this, and he got reported. During his interrogation, the rest of the info came and the office called me down. My actual questioning was surreal and comical, but that's a different story. The funniest part was sitting at home during my 3-day mandatory out-of-school suspension, listening to the voicemail from the school about the security breach and the following password change that got sent out to every parent in the district. Story 85. Oh, this is my time to shine. Our technical school had 5 classic airplanes ranging from World War II fighters to more modern jets. Students learn aircraft maintenance by working on the planes. Every year there's an exposition where the planes are moved to the parking lot and the engines are started. There was one time that our venerable Gloucester Meteor, one of the very first jet fighters ever, had its jets turned on facing the windows of the school. They all broke with one big explosion that scared everyone crapless. Another, less interesting story includes a student selecting a teacher to give him the diploma when graduating and then punching him right on the face in the middle of the ceremony. The teacher had to be taken to the hospital and have his jaw reconstructed with titanium. The student couldn't be suspended because he had already graduated. Finally, there was this time when the older students organized a riot. Every day, we used to line up in the school's main hall and greet the headmaster. This time, some old student gave an order and we all run for the door, some 500 or so students, completely overwhelming the teachers. We cut one of the main streets close to the school to complain to the local government for them to pay for fixing the school's heating, which had been broken for 2 years. It was quite successful. School in Argentina is rough. Story 86. My high school was open campus until the event in question. There was a road with a steep hill that people used to drive to try to catch air as they hit the crest. One day, a group of people took off on the lunch break to go do this, and there was a garbage truck stopped on the other side of the hill, which they hit. I don't recall if anyone died since I'd only just transferred to the school after it happened, but one guy was in a halo for most of the year, and another guy had some brain trauma that left him a bit off. I didn't know him before, but I hear he was a quite different and popular person. It was really sad because I only ever knew him as a bit slow and a huge perv. I have a distinct recollection of recoiling at his advances one time, only to have people around say not to get angry since his behavior was a result of the accident. Story 87. My school was featured on the MTV show High School Stories that came on during the early 2000s. A student there ran a school ID forgery operation. The deal was that students who had off-campus lunch privileges were issued special school ID cards that had to be shown to a school security officer who checked every student and every car exiting the campus for lunch. In order to have off-campus privileges, you have to have parents' written permission, be an upperclassman, and have a certain GPA, so not everyone had this. The dude in question would sell photoshopped IDs to students who didn't have off-campus for whatever reason, so they could flash them to the security guard and be able to leave the campus for lunch. He did this for several dozens of students, and you wouldn't know it. He ended up getting caught. The school resource officer went to his home and searched his computer and found records for all the students he made the IDs saved on his hard drive. So he and about 60 other students got suspended from school. It made the local paper though, and the MTV show even did an episode about it. Story 88. I've told this story before, but it's relevant. This happened when I was a sophomore. The popular crew in the grade above mine were obviously full of beautiful people, but the main couple were honestly two of the most gorgeous people I've ever seen. He played football, she was a cheerleader, the whole bit. They dated for most of high school, but the whole group had this weird thing that even though they were coupled up for the most part, they would all sleep around with each other and occasionally people from outside of our school. Well, I guess one of them slept with someone from outside the group and got syphilis. There were rumors flying about it, who had it, where did it come from, etc. Then all of a sudden we started hearing that another person had gotten it, and another. Syphilis spread through the junior class like wildfire, and all we could do was watch it happen. For 2 full weeks we would come into school and find out that someone else would have it. Eventually people figured out that maybe they should just stop sleeping with each other, and it stopped. It was hot gossip at the time, but I couldn't help but feel bad for them. Story 89. There were a few incidents at my middle and high school. 7th grade, a kid pulled a light switch out of the boys' bathroom. They didn't even use a screwdriver either. They just mangled the cover and ripped it straight out of the wall. The only reason anybody knew it happened was the superintendent got on the loudspeaker reprimanding who did it and asking anybody who did it to come forward. 8th grade. Someone claimed to be planning to shoot the school on the last day of classes. There was an assembly about it while police searched for whoever supposedly was going to shoot up the place. 9th grade. Someone actually tried shooting up the high school with a BB gun. The school went under lockdown for 4 hours while the police tried to arrest the kid. He got expelled. I had study hall on the opposite end of the school, so I was fine, but it was the most boring study hall I've ever gone to. 12th grade. Someone again threatened to shoot up the school and was immediately expelled. They were a senior too, so close to being free. Also, a couple kids got in a fight in one of the biology rooms, which I don't remember when it happened. They both got suspended though, and apparently they broke some form of glass. I don't remember if it was a beaker or a graduated cylinder or a window on a cabinet in the process. Story 91. Where do I start? First, there was this rumor that started about a supposed shootout between the Bloods and the Crips in my small Georgia town middle school. Nothing ever came of it though, but a lot of people skipped school that day. Then there was a bomb threat in high school where we had to stand outside behind the church across the road for most of the last period of the day. Turned out to just be a prank. Then we had 2 students that got caught having some relations under the stairs in between classes. I think I was either a junior or senior and these students were freshmen. Never really found out who, but some people said they were disabled students. Finally, a few years after I graduated, there was a group of kids that wore wolf ears and tails and would sit in circles before school and howl. They supposedly thought they were wolves in human bodies. There was a big scare where a lot of people were saying they were going to shoot up the school. Pretty sure the shooting rumor just started because kids were weird, but I'm not sure. The shooting never happened and nobody ever got in trouble. Edit. Figured I'd add this as well. There was a girl a grade ahead of me that everyone called Peanut Butter Girl. Everyone said she would put peanut butter on guys' chicken and then lick it off. Some people even said she put peanut butter on herself and then let her dog lick it off. She says the thing with the guy is true, but the dog thing isn't. Story 92. I'm always too late to these for my comments to actually be seen, but I'll still try. My school had a lot of incidents over the years that I went there. It was a very, very small school, and any drama that occurred seemed to get blown out of proportion. During my junior high years, we had a whole lot of problem boys that seemed to instigate a lot of the things that happened. They stirred up a lot of problems around the school, like near constant property damage, smoking in and around the school, bullying students and teachers, etc. In 7th grade, they were older. We had shared classes with the 2 grades above us. During gym, the teacher just got sick of it and kind of snapped. He was screaming mad and rounded up these 4 boys and ordered them to sit inside the middle circle of the gym. Then he grabbed the dodgeballs and told everyone to open fire. For the next 10 minutes, these kids got pelted with dodgeballs as hard as the class could throw them. 2 of the kids were in tears at the end. One of them punched the gym wall out of anger so hard that he broke his knuckles. The teacher was pulled from all classes for the rest of the day and was promptly fired. Went on to have a very short-lived boxing career. The video of him getting the crap beaten out of him in the ring made its rounds through the students.